And now joining me on the news to further discuss this issue is the director at Human Rights Watch, Lewis Mudge, to shed more light. Thank you, Lewis, for joining us on the news.
Thanks for having me.
All right, now this is a trial against the rebel commander. What update can you give us about Mahamat Said Kani's trial?
Well, as you just noted, it started yesterday. I think what's most significant about this trial is that while this is the fourth individual to have been transferred to The Hague, to the International Criminal Court, this is the first individual from the Seleka rebel group. This was a rebel group that started in late 2012 and took power in Bangui in March of 2013. And while the situation in the Central African Republic for decades, really from colonialism, from when the French left power, while the situation has been incredibly fragile, the last 10 years, the violence of the last 10 years has been particularly acute. And a lot of that is because of the violence that has been sparked by the Seleka. So it is very significant that for the first time, we're seeing a Seleka commander being held accountable. But I will add that this Said is not by any stretch the highest ranking or even amongst the highest ranking of the Seleka commanders. So while he certainly is a high ranking commander, the International Criminal Court or the Special Criminal Court, which is a body in the Central African Republic, they really need to do more to target those highest ranking Seleka commanders and hold them accountable.
All right, Lewis, now we also know that Said was charged with so many different crimes and atrocities. And one of the things that he was said to have done was owning the compound where the supporters of the deposed president, Francois, in 2013 were tortured. And now he has pleaded not guilty to these charges. So what were the reactions of the jury? And most importantly, how did the people react to this?
Yeah, I mean, 2013 was a very, very tense moment in Bangui, in the capital. The OCRB, the police compound that Said managed, has a horrible reputation, but the Seleka absolutely used that compound to bring in both real and suspected supporters of Francois Bozizé, who was the former president, who they overthrew, and torture them. We've documented numerous extrajudicial executions of people who were accused of being supporters of Bozizé in the same time. So, you know, the fact that one of the torture chamber's leaders, Said, who really was known as this guy who ran this block called the OCRB for a period of months, the fact that he's being held accountable will absolutely mean something to people in Bangui. But I can tell you, as someone who goes to Bangui often, as someone who's lived there in the past, I can tell you that Central Africans also want some of the biggest fish. So the former president, Michel Chichodia, his right-hand man, Nohadine Adam, they want some of these big fish also to be held accountable. Said has blood on his hands, in our opinion, at Human Rights Watch. Obviously, these are crimes he is alleged to have committed, and he has pleaded not guilty. But according to our research, certainly this individual has blood on his hands. But we also need to not lose sight of the fact that the World Court, in so much as that the Central African courts are not stepping up, the World Court also needs to target the biggest fish out there.
Okay, and also we know that Said's defense team says they want to question the validity of the evidences that were used against him in court. So do we say that there are some irregularities in some of the papers presented, some of the evidences? I mean, these are things that happened that so many people saw. So do we say there are irregularities, and what are those irregularities?
I think what the defense team is going to do is they're going to try to discredit victims and witnesses. I mean, a lot of this is going to rest on eyewitness testimony. You know, the Seleka, they came out of the northeast of the country near the Darfur border. These are not people that kept written records. Said was most likely not given written records from his commanders as to how to persecute and torture Bozizé sympathizers. So a lot of this is going to hinge on victims. So this is people who he oversaw the torture of. A lot of this will also hinge on witnesses, so people saw torture. And what the defense is most likely going to do is try to poke holes in that. Some of these crimes are almost 10 years ago. A lot of these people have been traumatized. There's been a huge amount of violence in the capital since then. There's been a lot of movement of people. And the defense is going to try to sort of poke holes in these individual testimonies. But I can tell you, as someone who was on the ground when the OCRB in this moment was torturing Bozizé suspects, and when the Seleka were really committing these incredibly atrocious crimes, it's going to be a hard defense to keep up, because the fact is that they committed such a widespread amount of serious human rights abuse that it's going to be hard to defend the actions of a commander like Said.
All right, Central Africa Director at Human Rights Watch, Louis Modge, thank you so much for discussing Mahamat Said's trial with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.